Americans for Fair Taxation presents the weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, November 8th, 2024. President Trump is our champion for the fair tax. FAIRtax supporters have long known that the way to get the fair tax passed is to have a president that's brave enough and determined enough to lead the charge. We now have one. President Trump has promised not to tax tips, Social Security benefits, and overtime. There have also been leaks from his campaign that the president-elect is looking at a national sales tax, the elimination of the income tax, and repeal of the 16th Amendment. That's all good news. The bad news is that the president-elect seems to favor tariffs as the way to replace the revenue generated by the income tax. Now, the fair tax is much more economically efficient than tariffs. It was designed specifically as a replacement for the income tax. Now, while tariffs do indeed bring money into the federal treasury, they're more well-suited to enforcing fair trade between countries than they are for simply raising revenue. Now, one thing's for certain. The D.C. elites and many members of Congress in both parties will work feverishly to retain the present income payroll tax system. For decades, these people have used the income tax system to raise large amounts of money for their re-election campaigns and exert control over our lives by giving tax breaks to those who do their bidding and tax penalties to those who don't. They also love having the power of the IRS at their disposal to punish those who dare oppose their agenda with higher taxes and IRS audits. They're not going to give all this up easily. Now, of course, we know that if the elites see that they're losing the fight to keep the income tax, they'll recommend a value-added tax, or VAT, to collect the income for the government. Now, if we make enough noise about the disadvantages of the VAT compared to the fair tax, the next move will be to try to sell President Trump on replacing the income payroll tax system with something like a 10% national retail sales tax with a prebate and raise the rest of the money through a value-added tax. Now, there's no question that such a plan, while not ideal, would be much better than the present income payroll tax system, especially if it includes a repeal of the 16th Amendment. However, we now have a chance to enact the fair tax. The fair tax alone will replace the revenue generated by the income tax. There will be no need for a value-added tax on top of it. Besides, the VAT has these problems. It will allow Congress to sell benefits to different special interests. It will require every business to complete VAT returns, even if they're not retailers. It will require an enforcement agency, probably the IRS, and it will allow Congress to hide much of the true cost of government. Now, people will know that there's a VAT on what they purchase, but after a while it will become invisible, like people assuming that their salary is only their take-home pay. In conclusion, to their credit, many fair tax supporters have soldiered on even when there was no realistic chance to enact the fair tax. Now, we have the opportunity that we've all dreamed of. We have a president that will make our dream for America come true if we come together and put forth the maximum effort. Now, we know the elites will try to stop us, but we also know that President Trump wants to rip out the bureaucracy that is crippling the United States, all for the profit of the elites and their minions. Members of Congress will fight us, but they're in a vulnerable position. What are they going to say if President Trump sits down with them and says, if you don't support my initiative to eliminate the income tax, I'll go into your district and explain to your constituents that I want to eliminate all federal taxation on their income and abolish the IRS, but you're standing in my way. President Trump understands that the fair tax is consistent with what he wants to do, free the American people from the chains of the elites. It also clearly shows the cost of government to every consumer in the U.S. This is also something he wants to do. Now, this is our chance, and it may not come again in our lifetime. We must come together and ensure that real tax reform, the fair tax, is not subverted by the elites in D.C. This will take the diligent efforts from all of us. We need your financial assistance, and we need your grassroots assistance. please email us at info@fairtax.org, and we'll give you some options on how you can best help us. At a minimum, please call your congressional representative and ask if he or she supports the fair tax. If so, thank him or her for their support and suggest they become a co-sponsor of H.R. 25 if they're not one already. If not, ask why not. If your representative claims to be unfamiliar with a fair tax, offer to have someone come to their office and explain it to them. The solution? Pass the fair tax. Now, why would D.C. pass the fair tax and give up an almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they will is if the rest of us demand it. Isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system in the IRS along with it? Help bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing or investing $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to FAIRtax.org to invest in AFFT and help us pass the fair tax. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.